Greetings everyone and welcome. I'm your host Captain Ryan. Today's video comes to us courtesy of Everett, who is playing in the Tier 7 Premium US Cruiser Daka, also known as the Atlanta, here in World of Warships. As the battle gets underway, it's Haven, it's standard battle mode, it's a Tier 7 maximum battle, and there are Tier 7 carriers in play. Now those Tier 7 carriers, though, are going to be of very little concern for Everett because the Atlanta has particularly good anti-aircraft. Specifically, if you'll look at it, you'll notice that the main batteries are not your standard cruiser fare. The main guns, in fact, look very similar to the same kind of guns you get as secondaries on US battleships, and as your primary weapons on ships like the Gearing and the Yu Yang. And the reason they look similar is because they are exactly those. There are 8 dual-mounted 127mm turrets. They are also dual-purpose, which means they serve as its primary anti-aircraft defense, giving this ship an incredible anti-aircraft defense rating for such a small size. The downside, of course, to the Atlanta is that it's a light cruiser. It has light cruiser armor, has a tendency to be quite squishy and easy to delete, especially when faced off against other cruisers. Battleships, not so much, because battleship shells, anything over 14 inches, have a tendency to over-penetrate. But cruisers, well, that's a different story. The other major problem with the Atlanta here is what you can see right now, and that's that these 127mm guns, well, they're the same guns you get on the Gearing, the same guns you get on the Yu Yang, and they have one hell of a firing arc. It's known as the Rainbow Arc. And specifically, the problem here is not the Great Arc, because it does allow you to fire over islands. It is, in fact, the shell flight time here. As you can see, Everett, at a range of little over 10 kilometers here, can get a minimum of 2 salvos in the air at a time. And if that ship was any further away, he'd be able to get 3 out and about. Plus, the range on this ship is limited there. You can see the maximum range just over 13 kilometers. This means that you do have to get a little bit closer than comfort would allow in order to get those shots off. However, the Atlanta does have a couple of other things as a premium cruiser. She gets the radar consumable. And the radar consumable is very, very useful here on the Tier 7, because oftentimes, like in this particular battle, you may find yourself running into Tier 5 and Tier 6 destroyers who haven't yet fully encountered radar. And usually means you can get them caught off guard by rushing up around an island, popping radar for all your friendly battleships and cruisers, and deleting the would-be assassin. And finally, something that the Atlanta has that a lot of people tend to forget she has, but you can see it right there in the weapon options, is torpedoes. Now the reason people forget that the Atlanta has torpedoes, and she gets 5 on each side, 2 launchers, 1 each side there you can see, is because these torpedoes are incredibly short range. They have a maximum distance of 4 kilometers. They also tend not to do a lot of damage, comparatively speaking, although if you get hit by all 5, it will absolutely ruin your day. And unless you're at a Tier 9 battleship, I think if you get hit by all 5, it might actually sink you. But then again, that would also require you letting an Atlanta get within 4 kilometers of you. And I know, in a battleship, these 127mm guns might not seem that scary, But seriously, why would you not shoot at the soft, squishy target that's suddenly bearing down on you? Now, Everin has been using the cruiser's rainbow arcs quite effectively, specifically using the best armor in the game as cover and concealment. He does have a friendly destroyer who seems to be particularly helpful when it comes to laying down smoke screens to also help conceal him. And so combine that with his own expert playstyle here, this all probably coming from his many hours of Minotaur gameplay, allows him to take position in strategic locations behind islands. But you'll notice he's not hugging the island. He is far enough away from it that an equally capable cruiser with rainbow arcs could come up and could hit him, provided they get spotted. But because he's just got a battleship back off in the distance, no cruisers on the enemy team right now who are in a position to hit him, he's just able to effectively sit back here and, with impunity, rain fire down upon the enemy. And this Amagi, well, he's got his own problems. He had a destroyer come charge him down. That destroyer was kind of foolish there, given how low health he was. And friendly second destroyer getting torpedoes off there. You can see those going out. Now, it looks like those torpedoes might hit the Amagi, but depending on how that Baron turns, they might also hit that Baron, and it would be wonderful if they could get rid of those two ships all at once here, as their team has now lost 4 ships to the enemy's 2. Granted, the enemy has lost a battleship and a cruiser, and Everin's team has lost 2 destroyers, a battleship, and a cruiser. So the destroyers not going to be worth as much as battleships and cruisers, obviously, but of course that gives the enemy team the destroyer advantage. And in standard battle, that's equally as important, having that advantage, as in domination. Now, destroyers don't have anywhere to go cap in standard battle until most of the big nasties and the cruisers with radar have been killed off, but they still can come around, use their stealthiness to hunt and hurt destroyers and cruisers, as well as battleships that are hiding off in the distance if they manage to work their way around the flanks. Looking at the situation, the game is still fairly equal. The enemy team's still up on points. They finally have lost one of their destroyers. There's another very low health destroyer who's made the mistake of using his guns to fire. So Everin is actually going to head that direction. Looking at the situation, on this side of the map that he's on, the enemy team has been pushed away, but they are making a push on the opposite side toward the base. So, being in a fast, light cruiser here, Everin is making the smart play. He's not going to continue to chase that Baron. He's not going to get sidetracked in tunnel vision on killing a specific target. Instead, he's going to relocate and try and provide additional support to his team where his team needs it. This denotes a smart cruiser, smart destroyer, and smart fast battleship captain. I highly encourage everybody to keep your eye on that minimap. Pay attention to who is where and how the enemy team is pushing up and playing. Because if you can pay attention to it, oftentimes you can get yourself relocated in time to provide adequate defense of all situations. Now, the enemy carrier is still in play, and the friendly carrier is still in play there, but you can see the friendly carrier has been having a difficult time dealing with the enemy carrier. The enemy carrier still has all of his planes there, full squadrons there. Friendly carrier not utilizing his cruisers and his battleships as effectively as he should be, trying to lure the enemy planes over a player like Everin here, who, as the carrier on the enemy team finally starts getting his aircraft pulled over here, he pops his defensive fire in an effort to shoot them down. The defensive fire consumable, of course, on the U.S. cruisers, very, very effective, very, very dangerous, and very, very useful. Shots coming in there managed to go through his bow there. Don't cause too much damage, but it is only a cruiser shooting at him here, fortunately. And I'm actually surprised that that cruiser decided to shoot at Everin and not at the Leander that's in front of him, especially because that Leander is effectively forced broadside while he clears this island. Of course, Leander does get torpedoes away at that enemy cruiser. Is that cruiser going to hit him? It looks like he is going to hit one there. That's going to be bad news for him, because now he's got two cruisers shooting at him, especially in Atlanta with its high rate of fire. Atlanta's not going to be particularly good at causing massive damage with these guns, specifically as a result of the 127mm, and she's not going to be very good at causing fires outright, though, because she's got so many guns. It doesn't matter how low the chance of fire is, you will eventually set one. That cruiser's dead. The enemy team now equal on ships to the friendly team here. Of course, both teams are surprisingly equal on points, but they shouldn't actually be equal on points here, because the enemy team sat in their cap for just a few seconds there. It paused points just long enough that Everin's team was not able to have a points lead here. Now, why would they have a points lead? It's simple. The enemy team has more destroyers, which means they've lost more larger capital ships that are worth more points. Enemy Scharnhorst closing in here. Everin is caught out in the open, and he takes a big hit there. He's fortunate the Scharnhorst doesn't have the best accuracy in the world there, because that could have been very, very bad. This kind of goes into paying attention here to your surroundings and not getting caught out in the open here. But doesn't matter at this point, as the Scharnhorst continues forward, he gets back behind that island. Now, you remember what I said about the Atlanta having 4-kilometer torpedoes? Well, they're actually pretty quick 4-kilometer torpedoes. And as the Scharnhorst pushes up, he seems to have forgotten that the Atlanta has them, because now he's close to well within torpedo range. Of course, Scharnhorst also has torpedoes, but Atlanta, fairly maneuverable ship, able to avoid them. Scharnhorst, on the other hand, not so fortunate, as he gets hit by all three of the 5 torpedoes and gets taken out of the game. Enemy Fuxin up here, still capping the base there, popping a smokescreen, trying to disappear into that smokescreen. Everin trying to land shots on it. Can he do it? Yes, he does actually manage to blind connect there with that destroyer. Of course, it wouldn't actually matter if that destroyer had popped a smokescreen, and I see a lot of destroyers who will do this without thinking. I know I will do it occasionally, and I usually have to stop myself. And that's, they will drop a smokescreen and go to sit in that smokescreen with an enemy radar cruiser at danger close ranges, well within their radar range. And that is, in fact, the case that if that Fuxin had disappeared into the smokescreen, if Everin hadn't been able to connect with those shots, he could have simply used his radar consumable, which he hasn't actually used this entire time, and lit him up and finished him off then and there, or just lit him up for somebody else to finish off, depending on who could get the shot off, depending on where that ship was. At this point, the enemy team has now lost their advantage. They've lost their lead, and they're actually down on ships. They're down to 4 ships. Everin's team still has 5. Both carriers, surprisingly enough, still in play. Then again, both carriers doing what carriers do best, and that is kind of just hide in the back of the map. Now, the Atlanta as a premium ship is actually pretty good for training cruiser captains. It'll be very good for training light cruiser captains. And it's also actually a decent ship for training destroyer captains. Now, the reason I say that is because if you've got concealment, expert on this ship. You're actually reasonably stealthy. Not stealthy enough to launch stealth torpedoes, but you are reasonably stealthy. It does have the torpedoes on it, so you can train up and utilize that torpedo reload skill if you so wish. And it's reasonably quick, plus those guns all just works out for working on your destroyer captain build for US destroyers. Plus that anti-aircraft, that sweet, sweet anti-aircraft. Want to build an anti-aircraft destroyer captain? Retraining on the Atlanta is the way to go. Enemy destroyer pops up here. You'll notice that Everin puts shots out forward there, but it takes him a few seconds to realize that destroyer is actually stationary. Not only is that destroyer stationary, he is actually, in fact, AFK at this point. Just stop there. Which is unfortunate for the enemy team. That destroyer really, really could have caused some serious problems for Everin's team if he had not been AFK. So Everin just going to go ahead and continue putting rounds out on him. There's his high caliber award, finishing off that destroyer. Pops his defensive fire as the enemy CV decides now is the time to deal with this pesky Atlanta. Of course, given the other targets that this CV could have shot at, gone after, and been attacking, why he chose the Atlanta, the most powerful Tier 7 AA cruiser available, I do not know. Friendly Fubuki manages to connect a torpedo on the enemy Nuremberg here, and the Nuremberg is chasing down that Fubuki. Unfortunately for him, he is out in the open, and Everin is behind solid rock armor. And again, because it's the Atlanta 127mm guns here, most of the shells from enemy ships, enemy cruisers at this point, are not going to be able to get that same rainbow arc in over here. Now this Nuremberg is burning down and does get taken out by Everin's main guns here and gets finished off. And now it's just the carrier left, and that carrier, ooh, he's full strength. And he's not too far away, not too far outside of Everin's range. Of course, this carrier is a fast carrier, so if he's smart, he'll just turn and open up the distance. Unfortunately, he's got limited locations to go, and now he's running out of planes, as you can see there, the torpedo bombers. Not a full squadron anymore. Dive bombers, on the other hand, yes, they are a full squadron, but that's alright. Again, Atlanta, very, very maneuverable cruiser with very good AA rating, even without defensive fire. But defensive fire here, almost off cooldown. Carrier is turning broadside and is now in range, so everyone's going to go ahead and open up. Friendly team in the cap circle is capping. The question is, are they going to cap out? There's also not enough time left in this game, just over a minute at this point. So they're not going to win on points, but they will win with the most points at the end of the game. Remember, standard battle mode, just like domination, the team with the most points at the end of the battle when the time runs out is the winner. The only way to get a draw at this point is for everybody to kill each other and no team to have a points advantage. That carrier, though, is desperately trying to run away from the situation here as he's being rained upon by Everin. He's got torpedo bombers inbound on him. The question is Everin going to be able to get the kill on this carrier? Yes, he does do it, and that's going to secure him his Kraken Unleashed right there with the end kill of the game with just seconds left in the game. Confederate Devastating Strike, Kraken Unleashed, and High Caliber there. 5 kills, 527 main battery hits. But look at that, 206,000 damage done. 27 aircraft shot down there. And 3,500 base XP, almost 3,600 base XP there. Very, very well done. Over double the next nearest guy on his team. And almost quadruple the top player on the enemy team. Anyway, that's it for today's video, folks. If you liked the video, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment down below, and let me know what you think. If you'd like to get semi-regular channel news and updates, you can do so by liking and following me on Facebook. If you'd like to help support me in the channel, you can do so by becoming my supporter on Patreon. If you've got a replay like this one that you'd like to see featured on my channel, you can send it to my email. And if you'd like to watch me play various games live, you can do so by following me on Twitch. You can find the links for all of those in the video description down below. And as always, I'll see you next time. This is Captain Rye, signing off.